Hello, Ed Kelly back with another edition of CEO Angles. Here to discuss the latest issues affecting the U.S. insurance industry is my very special guest, President of P&C Operations in the U.S. for Swiss Re and an AAIS board member, Mr. Keith Wolfe. Keith, welcome to CEO Angles.
Hey, it's great to be here with you, Ed. Thanks.
Well, I'd like to start with the topic that unfortunately remains top of mind, COVID-19. And as you know, AAIS has been involved in a successful proof of concept using OpenIDL to conduct a data call surrounding BI losses caused by the pandemic. With cases back on the rise, it doesn't appear that we're completely out of the woods. Are there any lessons learned from the past year that can help us navigate a resurgence?
Well, I think, the most obvious one that most of us have experienced so far is that, working remotely is absolutely something our industry had never really fully tested and can absolutely do. It does put a little relief on trying to get back to whatever the new normal will be after the pandemic is beyond us a little further than we are. But I'm very concerned, honestly, about talent and retention. That's probably the biggest concern we have still. The junior talent, those with less than 5 years of experience in the industry, are the ones we're probably most worried about because they've really never experienced, or only for a bit, the true culture of a company that they've been part of.
Yeah, I agree. Data remains the lifeblood of insurance and will be even more important as the world continues to be more connected digitally. We believe OpenIDL can help us manage data more effectively while maintaining data privacy and security. What do you see as the biggest trends in data going forward?
Yeah, so this is a fascinating area for us here at Swiss Re as well. We have spent a ton of time trying to figure out how to use both public and proprietary data sources that are those we have never really accessed before. I mean, the world is full of information now that I think can help the insurance industry operate better and assess risk on a much more robust basis. This is the essence of almost any data activity we have going on, and really getting access to the data that tells us really what risks are actually operating like versus making proxy assumptions on data we've been using for decades is probably where we focus the most.
Thank you. Another topic on the minds of carriers is climate change. We've been working on the development of products and services dealing with the growing risk of flood, wildfire, and other related risks. What can insurers do to help their customers manage risk related to climate change?
This one's been quite difficult the last few years. Obviously, here in the United States, we've seen an enormous uptick in some of these what we call secondary peril areas. The ongoing wildfires right now are a great example of where that's really hitting home for many of our clients. The most important part here is to recognize there's been a systemic shift in the risk levels for certain exposures like wildfire or flood. This is not the same exposure levels we would have seen 5, 10, or even 20 years ago. There's still quite a few folks who don't acknowledge this is a pretty permanent change at this point, and that's the part that you have to really have the awareness and lack of hubris to ignore.
Cyber risk and the growing concern over ransomware are making headlines. What can the insurance and reinsurance market do to provide some protection?
This one is really difficult. So cyber is a space we've obviously operated in for quite a while now. The industry has not come to the size, I think, that was expected even a few years ago in terms of premium that's spent in the space. Yet the risk that's in almost the entire system for cyber is growing exponentially, we think. The latest ransomware incidents on small businesses, this is another telltale sign that there's some pretty difficult exposures out there for us to digest. And the speed at which the cyber risks evolve and manifest is actually something that we're probably most concerned about. You can establish rules and practices for risk around cyber, and they almost need to change daily given the risks and threats that are out there. So this is one where it really requires a lot of people outside the insurance industry, I think, to assess and be able to adapt properly here. The governments, especially federal ones here in the US, I think are going to have to lean into this a lot more, to be honest. They have the best information and most up-to-date stuff that isn't exactly easy to access to help assess this risk for our industry.
So aside from these emerging risks, there are some social and economic drivers affecting insurance performance, like inflations and interest rates. How will these issues affect the insurance and reinsurance market in the coming year?
So inflation's, I think, an easier one to talk about. Obviously, we think it's ticking up like most of the folks in the macro economy. This is something that we have to adjust for in how we operate the business, but this is not a new issue for the insurance industry. We've seen inflation come and go over decades now and can adjust for it, I think, properly. The one that I think is more concerning, and again, it's back to, do we have a more permanent change on our hands or something that systemically is different than what we've experienced, is social inflation. And this is related mostly to liability lines, which is a lot of areas where there's judicial or other litigation issues that have come up, where society doesn't really like big corporations. They don't like insurance companies, and they let you know it in the court of law. And this is something we have to see over and over again now, and really, again, permanently adjust for what is the magnitude of this type of thinking in our own society.
Well, thank you. That's all the time we have. So really appreciate, Keith, your time and your perspective on these issues.
Hey, it's super great to be here, Ed. Thank you for the invitation. Look forward to seeing you soon.
If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed in this edition of CEO Angles, don't hesitate to reach out to your AAIS engagement manager. Until next time, this is Ed Kelly with CEO Angles.